everybody to the second Thursday of the month program from the Concord Historical Society in conjunction with the Walker Lecture Series. This is quite a pleasure for us. The Walker Lecture Series actually sponsors all the advertising and everything that comes together for these events. And we, of course, have to thank our host, Kimball Jenkins. Our offices are here in their beautiful building, the house next door, but we hold our events here in a more handicap accessible, friendly space, and it's a joy to have you here. This evening, our presenter is Alwyn Fine, who has a long-standing role with the Walker Lecture Series to teach us about its history and its long legacy here in the city of Concord. Everyone, please welcome Alwyn.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry I'm sitting, but I don't have much choice because I can't stand very long. But thank you for coming, and I'll try to enlighten you as to what we are and why we are, and pass out some information. And if you have questions at the end or any time, just speak up, and I'll try to answer your questions. We have a couple of other trustees here tonight. John Kelly is right here, and Paul is back there. And our other trustees I thought were coming. One of them is Dale Harrington. He's the president. And we have Joanne Martin, who does all of our sound work. John does all of our publicity work. Paula is our secretary. I'm the treasurer. And who did I leave out? Oh, Danielle is our new person, and she is going to be our bookkeeper, because one of the things that we learned this fall, or yes, this past fall and winter, from the Department of Revenue, yeah, maybe that was what it is. They want us to keep separate the books, the check writing, and the person who signs the check. They said that they're doing a lot of work with security, and they found out that many organizations, or some organizations of nonprofit, some people have been signing checks to themselves or reimbursing themselves for things that they don't have any proof that they have purchased the things or have gone to the function. And I did tonight have Jennifer sign a slip, a form, every time we write a check for anything, a grant, not everything, but a grant or a performance. That check has to be verified, or the receipt of the check has to be verified by the person who receives it. It needs to be dated, and they have to sign it so that we have proof that that money was actually transferred to someone else. But that's getting off the subject a little bit. I am the treasurer, so I thought I'd explain that a little bit. And the reason why we have now hired a bookkeeper who has become a trustee also, and comes to the meetings. But the purpose here is to talk about the Walker Lecture itself and the trust. And the Walker Lecture was founded back in 1896. And that's when they had the first trustee meeting. It's in the documents that we have. They were going to start with 3 trustees. And we had only 3 trustees up until quite recently, actually. I think, Paula, maybe you were the last of the new ones before Danielle to come in. And how long have you been?
Maybe close to 10 years.
Wow, already 10 years. And I've been a trustee since the 1915 or sooner. 2015. No. I was 2090 something. I started out as I started out a year in training with David Tardif. David Tardif was one of three trustees. This was myself, David Tardif, and Dick Osborne when I came aboard. And we meet and we decide on programs that we're going to present, and we decide on how the money is going to be spent if we're giving grants. So the fund itself was started by Rebecca, excuse me? Abigail. I'm sorry, my mind is a little off today. Abigail started it after her husband passed away. And backing up a little bit, Timothy Walker was the second Timothy Walker. The first Timothy Walker was in the 1700s. And he came to Concord as the very first and only at the time minister. And he had the responsibility, of course, of his flock. But it wasn't an easy life, and he wrote a diary, which has been published, and this is a copy. This one actually belongs to Dale Harrington, who's the president. And it tells day by day, everything from what the weather is like, who he baptized, who he married, whether he went on a side trip to some other town or whether he went back to Woburn where he grew up. If anyone's interested, there's copies that you can purchase, I think from Amazon, and I have also a website that I can pass out. I'm sorry, they're a little wet because I spilled water on them, but they'll dry out. And if anyone's interested in the website, they can go online and find that. So Abigail started this. She gave us, or gave Bewilled or Willed, $10,000, $30,000 to be used for programs in science, history, art, for lectures. It was a lecture series at the time. And they were going to show mostly travelogues or history of places that other people had been to or were involved in studying. And I have a list of what the first 5 or 6 programs were back in 1896. The programs were not done at the City Auditorium in 1896. They were done at White's Opera House. And White's Opera House held about at least 1,000 people. And it was on the corner of Park Street and South Main. And after, I think in 1900 or 1903, it burned. And at the time that it burned, the City Auditorium was being built. And the City Auditorium opened in 1904. So the programs before 1904 were done at White's. After 1904, they were done at the Concord City Auditorium. The Concord City Auditorium at the time held more people. And the interesting thing is, when they were going at the White's Opera House, where they had 1,000 seats, people would stand in line and get tickets. We do not do tickets today. They didn't charge, we don't charge, but they did do tickets. And you had to have one in order to get in. So people would line up in the morning to get the tickets for the night show. And some of the people couldn't be in line all day or for an hour or two, so they would pay young boys to go stand in line and get tickets for the parents or their friends' parents, so that parents could go to work or do their daily jobs at home. And the boys would get paid $1 a ticket, I think. I mean, a penny a ticket, so that it was worth their while. Back then, a penny was worth a lot. I remember when I could ride the bus in England from my home from my school to my dance class for a penny, and it wasn't easy to find extra pennies back then. I wasn't back in 1904, but I know what the value of a penny is. I don't think anybody knows the value of a penny anymore. In fact, aren't they talking about getting rid of pennies? I hope they don't.
I have plenty.
Hmm?
I have plenty.
You have plenty?
Plenty of pennies.
Oh. So anyway, the city auditorium was built, and it was opened in 1904, and it was different from what it is today. There was a balcony, a wraparound balcony, a second floor balcony, went all the way from the corners, just like in an old theater. They had the seats, for special people would sit in the corners, and there's pictures of it at the auditorium. There are pictures of the old theater before it was renovated, and they had a floor that they could take up. They could take up all the seats, and they would hold dances and special events there, where they could use the whole downstairs. The whole downstairs could be used for dancing and programs without the seats. And they used to do that all the time. And then I think it was 1927 that the city renovated, and the balcony was shortened to just what we have today. And there are photos again at the auditorium that anytime you come, and I think most of you have been there before, could look at those pictures, and they'll mean more to you if you know the history a little bit. So then they started the programs, and I was going to tell you some of the ideas that they had. The first show was on January 29th, 1896. And it was the Honorable John D. Long, and his speech was on Abraham Lincoln. And then in February, Reverend Hovey talked about our American Arabia. And the background on that is that Horace Carter Harvey was an American congregational minister, an archaeologist, and author, and he particularly knew more about cave exploration. So obviously our American Arabia was talking about caves. And in February of that year, someone did a talk on adventures in the Arctic Asia, which, let me see, it was travels in Siberia, and his critical views on Russian government treatments of exiles. And those were the type of programs they had back then, because as it was organized, it was established as a lecture series. And when I first became a trustee, we did a lot of lectures. Now we try to have at least two each season, spring and fall and spring. We like to have at least 2 lectures because that's what we started out doing. But it's not as easy to do lectures today because not with television and movies and telephones and iPads, people can get most of the travelogues that they want right on their little phones or on their TV. So we have broadened our scope, and we went to the courts and asked, I think in 2000, maybe 1995 or so, we went to the court and we asked if we could add entertainment to our series. And the court voted, it was the legislature, I believe, voted and gave us permission to add that to the will. And so that's now why we can do so much entertainment and so few travelogues. It's not easy to find them, to find speakers to just talk about interesting things. But we've been very good. John, especially, has been finding people. And we have certain people that we bring back. We try not to bring them back every year, but maybe every other year. There are certain speakers who are really good. And we've discovered in the last 2 or 3 years that there's a wonderful speaker from Manchester who does presentations on art, and they have been really good. And I believe she was here this past year. And in a couple of years, she'll be back because she has a whole repertoire of work. And all of our programs are still done at the Concord City Auditorium, except for the Messiah. And the Messiah started out being done at the South Congregational Church. And the only reason it got moved is because everyone was waiting in line to go one December, and they had a fire at the church. And so they moved over very quickly. They all walked over to St. Paul's Church, and it's been at St. Paul's Church since. But that's the only program that isn't done at the City Auditorium, except for some of the summer programs that we sponsor for in-town Concord, or from the Market Days program. And when we first started sponsoring, we actually provided entertainment for the Main Street stage. But now we just provide the money and they find the entertainment. Or at least that's what, John, am I correct? That's what it is now. So we have, and I can hand out later the little brochure, but it's not this year's brochure, it's last year's brochure. But on the back of last year's brochure, we have next year's fall program. And in the fall, we have a speaker for the very first one. And he's wonderful. And his name is Mike Tugas, and he's been a couple of times before. And then we have, R.P. Hale, who's doing the music, history of music, and astronomy. And he ties them together. He brings all of his instruments that he's created, and he plays. He comes in costume, and he's a character. I mean, he plays a character, but he is a character. Same difference. And then we have a program called Grand Ole Opry throughout the years. And we have New England Legends. And maybe John could tell us what New England legends are.
Sure, we have a guy named Jeff, who is a podcaster and television producer. He has a program called Ghosts and Legends, and several variations on that. New England Legends is one of them. Christmas Legends is another. But he'll be here with Ghosts and Legends.
And that's in October, near Halloween. So that should be a good show for everyone to come to, especially families should bring all their kids, and they could enjoy that. So that's the type of thing that's coming out in the fall. That's not the whole fall, but I won't read them all. And we have some of those brochures right here, and you can pick one up, and it's in the centerfold. And then also in the centerfold, it tells you about the other things that we do. We don't just do programs at the City Auditorium. We support other people. As Jennifer mentioned, we support the Concord Historical Society. We support the Concord Community Music School. We're the sole sponsor for the Bach concerts, which are held on the first and second Thursdays of the month, and they're from 12:10 until 12:50. And you go in, you can bring your lunch, and you sit there and you just enjoy the program. Sometimes the first of the month they're explaining what the second week will be. So that the first one may not be the music, but an explanation of the music or the era that they're going to be singing about. And then the second week, they'll do the songs of that particular era. And so that's something that we've been doing for several years now. We've been sponsoring that. And we also they don't think they're doing it this year. We did a series called What's Up, Doc? And it was at the Concord Hospital. And it was a series of lectures on health problems. We started out sponsoring that when they were doing an annual program on health problems, health issues. And I think the very first one we did was we had famous doctors here, and they did a program on cancer and cancer research. But they're not all on that. And you can get on their website, you can get a list of the concerts or the lectures that they do. And we sponsor the Concord Parks and Rec music in the parks. And the parks are the parks that are down on Eagle Square, that one down on Eagle Square. And they have concerts at White Park. And they have concerts up on the Heights. And they have concerts down behind the auditorium, behind the arena. They're weekly during the summer. We sponsor the Nevers Band, and they do their concert series down at the arena and at the State House and different other, Rolfe Park in Pennacook. So we give them money. We don't sponsor, but we have given a grant to Concord TV, mostly because they're so helpful to us and recording our programs at the auditorium sometimes, and especially during COVID, they would record programs that we could send out, and people could watch them on their own TVs at home. And the people that were smart enough to sign up for our email, they gave us an email and signed up so that they could get all our announcements, got to see all of those COVID programs, or the programs during COVID. They got to see them all on their TV at home. And I have friends in other parts of the country that I got to sign up on the email, and they were thrilled to be able to see these programs. And sometimes we, even now, do programs that we have them taped by our wonderful friends at Concord TV, and then we can send them out. So that, and then we do Freeze Brothers, big band. We give them money that they put towards their scholarship program. Concord High School, we did a grant to their robotics team so that we were trying to work our way through the STEM program that they're doing in the high school and all the different schools now. And we thought robotics was something that we should try to support, so we did that. Let's see, what else? Oh, the Concord High School Music Program. We give them a grant so that they can have their programs at Capitol Center for the Arts, and parents don't have to pay, because some of them, including myself, used to go to all my grandchildren's and my kids' and my grandchildren's concerts, and we'd always have to pay. And the first time we went, we walked there from we parked on one of the side streets that I think my granddaughter at that time had an apartment, and we all parked over there, and we hiked ourselves down to the city auditorium, but we left all our bags and everything in the car. And we got there, and they said we had to pay $5 to get in. And I said, that's not fair, that's not right, because, a lot of families have other children that would like to go and see their brothers or sisters performing. And so we decided, I sort of convinced Walker Lecture to pay for the concerts at the Capitol Center for the Arts. So now parents can go and they just can walk in. They don't have to pay. And it's one of the deals is that they don't ask for donations while they're there either. So I hope they're still adhering to that. And let's see, there's a couple of others. I think that's it. In Town Concord, we do that. We do in Town Concord for market days. We do in Town Concord, or we have in the past in Town Concord for the Winter Fest. We donated to the Arts and Sound Festival that was this last fall. So there's a lot more now to the Walker Lecture than what it was when we first started. There's a lot more now than when I even came on board, because we have a lot of money, and it all came from that $30,000, but it's been well invested, and we have to find ways to use that money. We can't just let it keep building, although, some people would say, why not? But the only thing that we can't do is spend the original donation. If we dip into that money, which was $30,000, if we dip into that, then we have to replace it. And according to the will, and according to Abigail, her wishes were that if money is spent, if any of the money is spent out of the $30,000, then it had to be replaced somehow. I don't think we'll ever have that problem as long as we're living, or as long as I'm living anyway, because that $30,000 has grown to over $3 million. And we, as you can tell from what I've been saying here, we spend a lot of money. And we are still in the nice situation that we're not spending anything that we aren't earning. And that's why we're having to find things, or happy to find other organizations Only stipulation, they have to be free and anyone can attend. So if someone asks us for money, but it's only for publicity, but they're still going to ask people to pay to get in the door, then they can't get our money. It has to be totally free. And we're very happy that we can do that. And we're very happy that we've had some very good financial help from our folks down at the financial office. And I don't need to tell you who we use, but they're wonderful people. And let's see what else. I'll flip a page. I spilled water on this, so my pages don't turn very easily. I really apologize. Do any of you have questions?
I do. Have any of the Walker family ever been trustees? Do you know?
Ever been what?
Trustees.
Served as trustees?
Oh, no.
They didn't have any children, right? Abigail didn't have any
No.
children?
They didn't have children.
She was the second wife, correct?
She was the second wife.
And hadn't she been his caretaker prior to marrying him?
Yes. She was the caretaker housekeeper. She was the housekeeper, and his second wife died. He was 90 or getting close to that, and it wasn't proper in those days for unmarried or free ladies to be in a house or living in a house with a male if they weren't married. And so he married her so that she could continue as the housekeeper. And when he died, he left a lot of money. And she didn't think that she deserved to have that money. So she found, she did the bequest to establish a fund for the citizens of Concord for lectures. It was a lecture fund. And she wanted people to know more about the world, because I believe it was his brother who was a doctor who traveled a lot. And he went to Europe several times. And he would come home with all these stories about how wonderful these places were, and she was just intrigued by it. And so she said, that's what I want to do with the money. I want to have it so that the people of Concord can learn more about the world and the world that they live in. And that's how it all got started.
And didn't they live just down the street, on the other side of the street?
Yes, they did, down there. And the house is still there.
Right.
So his first name was
Timothy.
Timothy Walker, so he left in his early 90s. Left a fair amount of money to his second or third wife,
Right.
but second by the name of
Abigail.
Abigail Walker. So much of the credit and insight goes to her for continuing this.
Yes, but she insisted that his name be on the will, on the trust. It was his money, but it was left to her, but she didn't want to spend it on herself. And so that's why she insisted that it be the Timothy and Abigail B. Walker Lecture Fund.
What did he do? Because you said his father was a minister?
He was the minister.
Oh.
He was the minister of he started the Congregational Church, which at the time was out on Clinton Street. And he was the one and only minister in the whole settlement. I mean, we're talking, a couple of 100 years ago.
So he made all this money as a minister?
Well, he had a farm.
Okay.
He sold produce. And I don't know what else he did in order to get all this money. I have no idea. Maybe he inherited it. But she also gave money to the state, it became the state hospital, the asylum for the mentally ill, and she gave money to the Rolfe and Rumford Asylum. She called it asylum, or they did in those days. But the Rolfe and Rumford home that she gave money to existed right up until a few years ago. Well, I say a few years. It's about 10 years probably now. And it was in the original one was down on South Main Street, down around where the CVS is, down there. That was the original one, but then they built over, it's near the Runlet, on one of those side streets across from the Runlet exit driveway. And it was a very nice home, and the kids were really well taken care of. I can attest to that because I was on the board of lady visitors, which is that's what they called the board at the time. And we used to have a good time with the kids, and I'm sorry it got closed. But the state changed their rules and regulations about raising children, and they started insisting that kids be returned to their families as much as possible. And pretty soon there were just no more kids, no more girls at the home. It was a lovely home.
Yes. I've always heard, I thought that Timothy and Abigail lived up on North State Street in a big old yellow house that was called the Poor Farm. Was that not the Walker Country Farm?
I haven't heard that before.
It was the brick house, which is right after the parsonage. So there's the Lutheran church, then there's the parsonage. The next home is a brick home.
But those were earlier Timothys.
Now that's what Timothy and Abigail lived.
Oh, okay.
The Poor Farm, he had land out on Clinton Street and he ended up selling to the city of Concord. And I think where White Farm is, they built a Poor Farm there. The city did.
Yes. Yeah. That sounds familiar.
Well, anyway, to get back to the Walker, I don't know about that farm or that house. But we do have these books that you're all welcome to take one home. And it starts out with a lot of the history. Abigail's pictures in here. It starts out a lot of the history. There's a lot of history of Concord in here. And it lists every program that was ever presented here at the auditorium. Up until I think 2000, I think is the last year, because we haven't done a remake, and this one goes to 2000. But every show that was ever here, and it's interesting, to just look and see who has been here over the years. And read there's also history of the different, whatever was going on. Survival of the Old Standby is one title there. And there's a lot of other pictures of the performers. So we have a whole carton of these here. If you want one, you just take one home and take one of the brochures, because it has all that information in it that I was talking about. And if these papers dry out, you could have a website. Any other questions?
You've done such a good job maintaining and expanding the program. What do the current trustees feel they need in order to make sure it goes into the next century?
Well, we have been discussing that. And we have come up with some ideas because we're trying to find ways to use the money in the way that it's supposed to be used and not have it just sit, but not necessarily all spent. There have been several suggestions of breaking up the trust, for one thing. It would still be the trust, but setting aside X amount of money for a particular group who wants to do a project. Say, a project in English, for instance, if they wanted to start a group of playwriters or poetry writers. But it would be managed and maintained by the group and not by us. And they would have to be responsible for letting us know how the money is used, and they would have to use it wisely, of course, and there would be no cost involved to anybody involved in a program. But that was just one idea. I can't talk about it too much, but it's the fund is so large now that it's just going to keep growing. And each year we try to spend what we earn that year. But when you're talking in millions, it's getting bigger amount every year that we have to figure out how to spend. That help?
When you sponsor something at the Capitol Center, you're paying them a fee to use the property, I presume.
Do I want?
Yes.
You're actually paying to use the Capitol Center building.
Yes.
Yes, well,
In addition to paying whatever the speech is for that evening.
yes, but I'm assuming that the school department has a budget for their music program and for their music concerts that covers some of the cost, and we're paying part of the cost of the concerts, so that the parents going don't have to pay to go. But they're still very expensive to use the Capitol Center.
And when we are at the city auditorium, we pay rent to use that, as well as paying the people putting on the programs. Yeah, we have to also rent the city auditorium. Yeah.
Can you share an approximation of the rent for the city auditorium versus CCA?
Oh, yes. Well, the city auditorium, I can tell you, is $325
For an evening,
for the evening.
whether it be hot August or the deer blows of mid-January with a blizzard.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's for nonprofits who are Concord based. If you rent the city auditorium and your address of the person renting or the group renting is Concord, then it's $325. If you're a nonprofit. If you're for profit, it's a different price. And if you're out of town nonprofit, it's a different price. If you're out of town for profit, it's a different price. So they're probably listed in the website for the city.
Yep.
But you donate the Walker series contributes $325.
Yes.
And others have to make up the difference.
Yes.
We also pay for cleaning, correct? And we have a liability insurance policy, and I'm not sure how much that is, but it's not free.
Not cheap,
Right,
There is no such thing as a free lunch.
right.
I understand.
But there is a pope.
And then we pay the performers and pay for them, like if they are coming from far away and they have to stay overnight, we pay for their hotel, their accommodations, their food, and that sort of thing. Or travel expenses, maybe pay for their flight or whatever.
So it could come up to several thousand.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
But to rent the Capitol Center for the Arts, that's thousands.
We also pay. our
That's not
lighting-
$325.
No. We also pay our lighting person, and we pay our sound person, and they're both very good, and they earn what we pay them. They're providing a real service to the community. But it's kind of a reminder, to me at least, that everything is a little bit more expensive than I might think about at first. Because when I hear about Capitol Center for the Arts, I sometimes roll my eyes at the ticket price. And yet, there are all kinds of important expenses behind that. Go to Broadway and a ticket is $150 or $200 and wonder, well, why is that? And yet, all of those expenses that we have, they have and more so.
I've been in town about 50 years and I've attended a lot of the Walker lectures. I have to tell you, the one that really was most thrilling to me that I've been to was the Canadian Brass. And I think you brought them to town about the mid-90s, maybe. Those are, for no price, they're terrific shows.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna date myself. The first one I ever went to was The Messiah. I think my father brought me and you to The Messiah. Then, I think I was in middle school, I saw Simon and Garfunkel
Oh, wow.
at the City
Yeah.
Auditorium. I also, when I was in high school, my friends and I, we were either in the band or involved in athletics or both. We attended several. I remember seeing lots of travel ones. I think Bermuda, there might have been one in New Zealand, but we also went to see Buddy Rich, the drummer.
Yes.
And then, sometime in the 80s, we saw Roberta Flack. That was at the Capitol Center for the Arts.
Where did you see Simon and Garfunkel?
That was at the City Auditorium.
City Auditorium.
Yeah. That was the
Wonderful.
first concert I ever went to.
I came across a ticket for that.
Oh, really?
1967.
Oh, that's what it was. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember. I knew I was in middle school, but I was like, what year was it?
And it was exciting, and I brought it to the Concord Historical Society, so it is in safe hands.
I wish I had
But it was a
it.
wonderful piece of ephemera. I wish I'd been to the concert though.
Yeah.
Oh, that brings up another question. Is there a library of recordings of these various old programs?
No.
They haven't been saved, or maybe you don't have the.
We
the
have
authority to
video
do
dating
that.
back to within the last 5 to 7 years. We have the ones that have been recorded at Concord TV archives, but
Video.
of video archive. But I don't think we recorded any prior to maybe, was COVID when we started, or maybe in the mid 2010s we recorded a few. Yeah,
We don't have the rights.
exactly.
That's what I was wondering.
That's what it comes down to, yeah. If it's not original work, yeah.
I have a suggestion for a future program.
Oh, good. We're always willing to take suggestions.
Yes.
There's a gentleman in Manchester named Jeff Rapsis.
Oh, we had him here last
Had
week.
him 2 weeks ago.
Is that right?
Jeff Rapsis.
I missed it. Oh, I don't have your brochure for this year.
Well, you need to get on our mailing list.
Hey.
Now I do.
Walkerlecture.org will
What was the
also
movie?
get you there. Well, we've had him at least twice,
Yes.
and he's great. And Jeff Rapsis tours throughout New Hampshire. He's often at the Wilton Town Hall Cinema, but sometimes he's in Colorado and California. He specializes in silent film. Though recently he did a program with Laurel and Hardy, Before They Could Speak, which was interesting because Laurel and Hardy are the only silent comedians I can name who thrived in the sound era as well as the silent era. And so that was a lot of fun, and I'm sorry you missed it.
Well, me too.
If you go to our webpage and then sign up for our email list, you'll never miss anything again.
Yes.
Jeff Rapsis is also the executive director of the Aviation Museum at the airport in Manchester.
Nice. Everyone help me thank Alwyn for her time. These are the books that we talked about. The brochures are right here. The website is nearly dry. What we do like to talk about at the end of our shows here is what's coming up with the Concord Historical Society. Dick Osborne, who Alwyn mentioned, he does put together the program schedule for the year. He has been out, his wife has been under the weather, and so off the top of my head, I cannot remember what is coming up in June for the second Thursday of the month, but I can tell you on the Saturday, June 28th, this is a partnership with the Concord Historical Society and the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire. All across the state of New Hampshire, we'll be doing the reading of Frederick Douglass's speech from, I can't remember what the year is right now, what the 4th of July means to the slave. It came at a time in American history where everybody was, yay, 4th of July, and yay, freedom. But for those people that were not free, they were still slaves, there was nothing to celebrate. That speech is very moving. It takes about an hour to go through. It is not one reader, it is going to be about 12 readers that go back and forth to give the context of the entire speech. Frederick Douglass was an amazing speechwriter and an amazing speaker. And the context of that speech is relevant still today. And I would strongly recommend coming to Market Days, of course, for In Town Concord. It is the last day of Market Days, and we will be hosting this at noontime on City Plaza with all the other communities in New Hampshire that are also participating. It is growing every single year. We have 252 communities throughout New Hampshire, and the Black Heritage Trail would like to get every single one of them on board. So I hope that you're able to join us here in our state capitol. It is actually very moving to hear and to participate in.
Yeah.
I do also want to tell you about some other adventures coming up in the coming year, which is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, that 1776 document that we all are so excited that we signed to declare ourselves independent from England. 250 years is a long time ago. It also happens to be the 300th anniversary of Concord being separated from Massachusetts under King George. We're very grateful for that. We would have been the town of Pennacook and Rumford at the time, and of course we eventually became the Concord, or the agreeable community that we are even today. Over the course of the next year, nonprofit organizations and several other groups in the city will be celebrating the 250/300 in this celebration. There are celebrations going on all across the country. You probably saw in April that Concord, Massachusetts was celebrating the ride of Paul Revere from Concord to Lexington on horseback, the one if by land, two if by sea, and I was told it was one lantern, right? One by sea, one by land, two by sea. And so those are some of the things that are going to be happening over the course of the next 365-ish days, starting really July 4th this year to celebrate that entire year. We are doing some things as the state capital with the state of New Hampshire. And I say that in terms of, as the state capital, we really are host to the entire state of New Hampshire in this celebration. You would be fascinated to know that the state of New Hampshire has one of the original constitutions of the United States of America. And it came about in this wild story that Bill Gardner was having his office renovated, and there was this silver tube and someone threw it in the garbage, and someone else had the wherewithal to open it up, and inside was a constitution. You know that there are several that were printed. Our version is in much better, pristine shape than even the one that's on display in Washington, D.C., because it doesn't see the light of day and the light is what diminishes the ink. We also have the original Bill of Rights, and we have the 11th Amendment, and of course our state constitution are things that our state archive holds that are really important to our history. When we talk about Concord history and the Walker Lecture Series and all the things that have happened here, we are a foundational community of our state, of our United States of America. And I hope that what you take from this message is that we are all immigrants unless you were part of our Native American communities, and the Native American communities and our immigrant communities need to celebrate along with us. We want to be respectful of all people in our community. Concord thrives every day to be a welcoming community. So over the next 365 days, as we celebrate 250 and 300, please remember that your neighbors, when you look beside them, you don't know their struggles, but please be welcoming and know that everyone is an important part of our community. So we'll figure out what's happening the second Thursday of June, but we know it will be sponsored by the Walker Lecture Series. And again, Alwyn, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.